Hello, welcome to this video from diagonalmove.com. My name is Neil, and today I'm going to be taking a quick look at a game that is a very important part of my collection, and that game is Machi Koro. Machi Koro is a older game now. It plays 2 to 4 players, and it's a city building game where you use cards and dice to generate income to build the best city you can through use of landmarks. The reason it's important to my collection is that one rainy afternoon in August a few years ago, about 5 years ago, I walked into a bookshop and walked out with this game. And it is the very first game in my collection since I rediscovered board games. And what I'll do now is I'll have a quick look at how it plays, and then I'll explain some of the things that I like and a few things that I perhaps don't like so much about this particular game. So here's Machi Koro set up for a 2-player game. Each player has 2 buildings in front of them and a series of landmarks, and the aim of the game is to generate enough money from these buildings to eventually be able to build all 4 of the landmarks. As you go through the game, you'll be rolling dice to activate the individual buildings in your town, and you'll be spending the income that you get from those activated buildings to build the landmarks. And as time goes by, the cards will stack, the landmarks will add effects, and your city will become a nice income generating city. So how does it work? Well, I think the first thing we need to do is look at the cards themselves. So for example, this bakery here. There's a few different features on the bakery. At the top we have what's called the activation number, which is the number that you need to roll on the dice in order for that building to be triggered. In this particular instance, if you were to roll a 2 or a 3, you would generate 1 coin from the bank on your turn. In addition, there is a symbol, an icon, next to the name of the building, and that is important when it comes to combinations of cards and building up a certain number of quite powerful combos with types of buildings that act with other buildings. For example, in this particular instance, the landmark, shopping mall landmark here will give you an additional coin for each building with that slice of toast symbol on it. So if you have enough of those, you will generate quite a sizable income in combination with the shopping mall. Okay. And the other thing that's quite important to note about these cards is the colours. The blue colours are income generating and will activate whenever anybody rolls that particular dice. So for example, if player 2 rolled a 1, my card would trigger an effect. Green is on your own turn. Red activates on another player's turn, so not on your own, and what it does is it gives you income from their buildings. So for example, in the case of this family restaurant, the player who rolled the dice would give anyone with this card 2 coins. And finally, we have the purple cards, which are quite powerful, very similar to the red cards, except they activate only on the player who rolls the dice turn, and they again generate income by taking from other players. So let's take an example of a turn, and let's say I rolled a 2. I would get 1 coin from the bank due to the bakery activating on a roll of a 2. What I can then do is I can spend my income, and I start with 3, so with the addition of a 1 I now have 4 money. And what I can do is I can look at the available cards in the centre and buy another building. And so for example, what I might do in this instance is I will spend 2 income to get this convenience store, and on the cards the 2 or another number in the bottom will indicate how much that's going to cost you to buy the card. And so what will happen here, on a roll of a 4, I will get 3 coins from the bank on my turn only, and that is the end of my turn. And then it'll be player 2's go, and player 2 will perhaps roll a 1. And in this instance, I will get a coin because of my wheat field says take a coin from the bank on anyone's turn, and they will also get a coin, and perhaps they'll buy a cafe, which will allow them to get money from me if I was to roll a 3. And now it's my turn again, and the game will flow like that until somebody builds all 4 of their landmarks, and the landmarks themselves do add additional effects, as I mentioned before, and so over time your engine will become more powerful as you build landmarks and as you build buildings. What's interesting about some of these buildings is that they do combine quite well, as I said. So for example, the cheese factories and the ranch will trigger quite a nice combination. The furniture factories and anything with a cog symbol will also trigger a very nice combination. Now what happens in Machi Koro is you can have more than one of any one card. So let's say, for example, I end up with 3 furniture factories, because why not? And the effect is 3 coins from the bank for each cog establishment that I own. Now when I roll an 8, what will happen is I'll get 3 coins for the single mine that I get, each for every furniture factory that I own. So in this particular instance I would get 9 coins. If I add another mine or a forest, again the combinations multiply, and so you go from having 1 or 2 coins every turn to having 15 or 20 or more coming into your town coffers during your turn, and the game has a very nice steady build up, followed by quite a rapid end as everyone's engines finally do kick into gear. The first player, I think I mentioned before, the first player to build all 4 of these, to flip them over to their yellow sides, is the winner. Now that we've seen how Machi Koro plays, what are some of the things that I do enjoy about playing Machi Koro? Well, the first thing is the artwork. The cards are all very well illustrated in this cartoony style. The icons are clear. The text is clear and easy to read. The way the cards can stack, again, it's very clear to read and easy to play. Having them all in a row or as a tableau when you play is, again, it has a lovely feel of building, which is what you want from a city building game. And thinking back to this being the very first game that I played, even though it is a simple game to play, it's easy to teach, it doesn't really take long before you understand what you have to do. It does have some introductory concepts that are used far more in many complex games. So for example, combinations, the way the cards would join together to combo to create a greater effect, the way you can diverge your strategy based on how you want to build your city, whether you want to go all in on these blue cards that generate income quite frequently, whether you want to have more of a take that strategy. So it's nice and varied, and that is something that we weren't used to, certainly I wasn't used to when I first began to play games. And I also do like the arc. I mentioned it in the round overview. It starts off quite slowly, just 1 or 2 cards being generated, generating income, and then by the end you have a whole row of cards, often stacked one on top of the other, generating 10, 15, 20 coins every time you roll the dice, and that's a great feeling to see. It's a great engine building mechanism. So is Machi Koro a great game in terms of how it plays, how it's designed? And the answer to that, in my view, is no. There are a few issues that I do have with it. Most of them relate to the numbers on the card, tops of the cards, the numbers that activate the buildings when certain dice numbers are rolled. essentially, if you need to roll those numbers in order to generate income. If you roll a number that you don't have a city for, a building for in your tableau, nothing will activate. You won't generate any income, and if you don't have any income saved over from a previous turn, you will essentially miss your turn. And that is a particular issue I find in the beginning of the game when you only have a couple of buildings. And it can get a little bit frustrating when you perhaps miss your turn a couple of times in a row, and so on and so forth. So what we do for that particular issue is we add a house rule, and it's the only house rule we've ever really had to add to a game in the last sort of 5 years. And that is simply that if there is nothing else to do on your turn, you've got no money, you can't buy anything, then you just get a coin from the bank so that at least you can buy one of those cheaper buildings. The other issue is around the strategies, because the buildings are all available all the time right from the beginning. Particularly with newer players, there tends to be certain strategies that are favoured more than others. Buying the factories with the cog cards, or the dairies with the cheese factory and so on, and they repeat themselves over and over again, and that's fine. But once you've played it a few times, it's nice to see some other strategies coming through. And what we do in that particular instance is we follow something that I saw a video around one of the expansions, where you have a limited number of cards available in the setup. Perhaps you have, I think it's something like 8 unique buildings we use, and over the course of the game you do see all the different types of buildings, but you start with just 8 unique types, and then the strategies have to mold to what's available. And that, as you become more of a seasoned gamer, shall we say, that becomes a much more attractive way to play. The other issue I have with the game, and this isn't really the fault of the game, it's simply it's to do with the packaging, and it is simply that the game has a tremendous amount of box with very little content. That is the entirety of the base game there, and it is clearly done to allow room for the expansions, but unless you wish to go and buy all the expansions, which are quite hard to get hold of now, it's really just a lot of wasted space, and the box is far bigger than it needs to be. But on the whole, I would recommend Machi Koro, particularly to newer players and to people who are looking for a game to take home to their families. It is a light-hearted, colourful, fun game, although there is a element to it for more experienced players where you can be a little bit more take that if you choose to be. The red cards and the purple cards where you take money from other players at certain points in the game, that can be used quite effectively if you fully commit to that strategy. A friend of mine who plays war games did that the last time I played, and had quite an interesting effect on the rest of us. So if you're new to games, or you'd like something bright and colourful and quick to play, I do suggest that Machi Koro is something you consider. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will put the like and subscribe buttons somewhere on the screen at some point. And please do click those buttons. And I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much.